somebody, when I first got here, said, wow, I haven't seen you in a long time. Our lives have just been so busy. And I was telling Joy, you know what? If we weren't doing this today, we wouldn't be here this time either. But we're glad to be here, and thank y'all for showing up for us. Joy, you go ahead and start.
Well, I'm Joy, Sharon Joy to be exact. And I was the oldest of 7 children.
Loud.
I was the oldest of 7 children. I have 3 loves that my whole family had. And one was gardening, one was family, and one was Bible, and singing included in there. And I loved the research that I don't know how we got nominated or whatever, but it must have been God, because I was up in Minnesota and Carol texted me. She said, what plants do you think you would like to do? And we kind of went back and forth. I decided to start with 2 trees, or 2 bigger plants. And so I thoroughly enjoyed the research, and I found out something that I did not know. When I came home, Carol and I were watching The Chosen on the TV series.
The biblical series, The Chosen?
Yes, and I found out that they are shooting almost all of the outside shots in Texas.
Wow. Because it's comparable to
the Holy Land.
So
So that was really exciting to me, and I came back home, and then we really got to digging into things. This is my sister Carol, as I said, and she wants to give a little introduction too.
Well, the Bible and gardening and singing have been a part of our life as far as I can remember. And so, we would like y'all to join us in a song. Oh, yeah. I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. Who the first master gardener was? Good answer! The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to take care of it. And I thought, you know what? That sounds like a master gardener to me.
The master, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the first one.
And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind. Genesis 1:11. Out of the 3,500 plants that grow in the Bible regions, only about 139 are mentioned in the Bible. I didn't know that until I did this. The exact nature of some, though, is a matter of opinion. It's not clear specifically what these particular plants are, and Joy's going to tell you about 2 of those that we're not clear about.
First of all, I'm going to talk about the Rose of Sharon. It is not really a rose. It's a hardy hibiscus shrub or tree. All Rose of Sharons are hibiscus, but not all hibiscus are Rose of Sharons. The Hebrew translation of the King James Version calls it the Rose of Sharon. Before that, there were previous translations that just called it the flower of the field. So we think that probably it was referred to whatever was growing wild in the field. But I like Rose of Sharon too, and my name is Sharon, so that was one reason I took this one. The traditional label, hibiscus, is a common name given to the Chinese hibiscus or the rose of China. The origin of the Rose of Sharon is native to China and India. The Greek name for mallow is what the hibiscus, ancient from the Greek. They called it that because of the mallow blossom resemblance to it. In Hebrew, as a girl's name, Sharon means a fertile plain, and it refers to the flat land at the foot of Mount Carmel. It seems like in the Bible a lot of names were after certain things that they saw. And I think names are very important. The names we give our children, the names we call our children. I don't like to speak evil into their lives, so if they trip, don't say, you clumsy ox. No, that doesn't speak anything positive in their life at all. So I think it's real important how we talk. Anyway, in the Bible, this symbolizes beauty, as in Song of Solomon. It describes the King Solomon's lover. Jesus Christ is referred to as the Rose of Sharon. And this is kind of my own ideas about similarities. He was referred to as beautiful. He has healing properties. He's sturdy, and we come to him for help, don't we? And he attracts people in need. And these hibiscus, these Rose of Sharons, attract hummingbirds and bees and birds and the butterflies. An Aphrodite Rose of Sharon and an Althea shrub and the Hibiscus Syracuse Aphrodite are some names of the Rose of Sharon. The Aphrodite was an ancient Greek goddess, and it does mention a lot of different gods in the Bible too that people, worship. And it says that the Aphrodite was a Greek goddess associated with love, lust, beauty, pleasure, passion, and procreation. There are quite a few number of fast-growing hibiscus trees. It calls them hibiscus trees. And these are all in Texas. Pink chiffon Rose of Sharon, blue chiffon hibiscus Rose of Sharon, the Rose of Sharon colestis, Manieris Rose of Sharon, Parablue Pink Ink Rose of Sharon, Peppermint Smoothie Hibiscus, Pink Rose Althea Tree, Bluebird Rose of Sharon Hibiscus, Parablue Rouge Rose of Sharon. And just a side note, the single flowered varieties are hardier than the double blooms. Have you seen the double blooms? They are beautiful. But the others are more hardy. In Texas, these Rose of Sharons are grown in zone 5B to 9A, actually to 8. They are grown in 9A, but not in Texas. 5 to 8 in Texas, and they thrive best in weather not below 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture lists hibiscus in category 4, which means the plant and the bloom are not toxic to humans, and they have health benefits. So people may eat blossoms or steep them in tea. The hibiscus Rose of Sharon is a deciduous, upright, occasionally spreading shrub or small tree with multiple trunks. The branches grow upright and will not droop except when they flower in late spring. They are to be planted 2 to 3 feet apart for single rows of hedges, again in zone 5B through 8, and they're tolerant of many soil texture mixtures and conditions, and acid to alkaline pH, so they grow in many different types. In full or nearly full sun, they require ample moisture and some protection from midday to afternoon sun to flower the best. They need to be in a minimum of 4 hours direct sun, so more than that if possible, and unfiltered sun. A little pruning in the late winter or early spring can bring large blossoms to the bush or the shrub. And they can also be pruned into a tree shape. You leave 2 to 3 buds per bush to encourage larger flowers. The blooms are pink, white, blue, red, purple. They open one day, close at night, and grow on new wood. They grow up to 12 feet tall and 6 to 10 feet wide. Like I said, you prune early spring and you leave 2 to 3 buds per branch to encourage larger blossoms. In Texas, in zone 5 to 8, they flower for long periods of time. They send out suckers too. And do we like suckers? No. They can take over. So you remove them right from the base as they come up. And it was interesting to know this. I didn't realize it because I've had hibiscus as hedge and so on and so forth. I don't know that I've had this one. But the more you pull them up, after a while you don't have to pull them up anymore. They quit. They get sick of that. So we just keep pulling them up while they're there, and then we won't have to do it eventually.
Also,
Yeah.
I have a Rose of Sharon, and I got mine from a little seedling that grew underneath one of the lady I was caregiving for her, and she had this beautiful Rose of Sharon, and it causes little seedlings to grow up. They weren't part of the sucker or anything, so I didn't have to. I don't know if they're supposed to do that, but I'm just telling you, you can get a little seedling out of experience. Okay, Joy is going to also talk about this flower, the lily of the field. And
I want to read that.
yeah, let me read that. And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothed the grass of the field, which today is, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you? What shall we eat, or what shall we drink? Wherewithal shall we be clothed? For all these things do the Gentiles seek, and his righteousness. For your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need of these things, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Therefore, no thought for tomorrow, for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. This is real important. Getting ready for this thing, I'm afraid I had a few thoughts for the morrow, but anyway, sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Matthew 6:28, I believe. Or does that say
I thought this was a really good picture of the flowers of the field because it shows that they're just taking over and such beautiful colors there. We do have a lot of beautiful flowers in the fields here in Texas too.
These actually were some of the wildflowers that were spoken of that many believe when it said the lilies of the field. And I think these are poppies or anemones or something of that sort. I'm not certain because it did not say in the picture.
This is the next flower I'm talking about, the lily of the garden, bright and morning star. It's one of the most popular worldwide, associated with religion and death, and most lilies do not thrive in Texas. True lilies, there's over 80 species in the world, very few adapted to long-lived garden perennials in Texas. However, our early hot summer send plants into premature dormancy before they have stored enough food reserves for future growth and flowering. So we found out that the lilies in Texas There are many members of the amaryllis family that Texas people think are lilies, but they're not true lilies. If you want to call them a lily, I guess you could do that. They have been referenced historically as lilies, but they are not typically. Anyway, a lily was mentioned in the Bible, just a term for many flowers of the field, just like we should. The biblical referral to lilies of the field are in Hosea 14:5. I will be like dew to Israel. He will blossom like a lily. Isn't that beautiful? And Song of Solomon 5:13. His lips are lilies dripping with a liquid myrrh. And Song of Solomon 2:1. I am the rose of Sharon, the lily of the valley. And then in 1 Kings 7:19-22. The capitals which were on the top of the pillars of the temple, you can see these pillars right here. It says they were on the top of the pillars in the temple porch and were of lily design. You can see kind of the blossoms up there at the top. They were 4 cubits. And then in 2 Chronicles 4:4-5, the temple basin, its brim was made like the brim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It could hold 3,000 baths, which we found out is around 12,000 gallons of water. Can you imagine them doing that without any crane or anything? And I just can't believe it. I thought maybe this was for a bath because of the baths, but it's not. It was for the priestly ceremonies of cleansing. I don't know if you're familiar with the Levitical law, but there's so many laws about if you touch this, you have to go wash off, and then you're unclean until morning or a few days, depending how you couldn't touch anything dead. I know that was one of the things. And if you had leprosy,
you had to wash your feet a lot too.
Yes, and they washed their feet as well. So they had to have lots of water on hand, and I guess they didn't want to run to the stream every time or something. But anyway, that was
a fancy way to put it up.
As the lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. And this was in Song of Solomon 2:2.
There are few true lilies in Texas, and we come to the Madonna lily. The Madonna lily grows in Zone 4. It's one of the oldest cultivated in existence as early as 1500 BC in Crete. It's native to the Balkans, Israel, and Lebanon. The white flower is a symbol of purity, and with the arrival of Christianity, and to some, a symbol of the Virgin Mary. The Madonna lily was adapted to alkaline area of north and central Texas. Occasionally in cemeteries, particularly of German heritage, they grow its foliage in the fall, and they bloom in the spring, and they go dormant in the summer. Okay, due to winter foliage, they need protection from extremely hard freezes. The tiger lily in Zone 3 is common in many older gardens throughout South Texas. It's a native of Korea, China, and Japan, and they're bright orange with black specks, as you can see that beautiful picture up there. The bulbs are actually eaten by the people that live in Korea, China, and Japan, and they thrive best in sandy, acid soil. They begin their growth in the spring, bloom early summer, go dormant in fall and winter. They produce no seeds. Propagation is by division during fall, or you can take a mini bulb from an axle. Do you know what the axle is? That's the axle. It's right between the branch there.
Have y'all ever seen this? I've never seen this.
They said,
tell them what it is.
Yes,
This is so
they
amazing.
said it produces no seeds, but during the fall, you can take a mini bulb. See that? That's called a mini bulb. And it's real little, and it's in the middle there between the branches.
Yes, right.
And during the fall, you take that mini bulb, it's among the leaves, between the leaves, and you care for it as you would a seedling.
You
It's
plant
about
it.
the size of a seed.
I never heard of
And you
it.
can plant that. That's the first, that's in the
I never
tiger.
saw one before, but there it's growing right
Yeah, I
there.
thought that was very interesting.
Do you dry them or like?
Well, it says treat it like a seed.
Treat it like a seed, so
I
maybe you
think-
would, because seeds you do
Yes.
dry.
Do it like a-
That's a good question.
Yeah, that
That
was.
is very good, but I bet you would.
Yeah,
Just
just
because treat it like a seed.
Yeah, that's
good.
what it. Okay, we have the Easter lily next. It's the most common in the Gulf Coast gardens. It's somewhat tender to nature. It's a popular florist pot plant, and I'm sure all of you have had them, right? And they're beautiful. I love beautiful white flowers. Yes. They're originally from Japan. They go dormant in the fall and winter, and they resume growth in the spring. They bloom summer. It is worth it to plant your potted plant in a flower bed as soon as you're done with it in the house. More than not, it will grow to bloom again. However, not usually the next year. And I didn't know that, and when I was in Florida, my husband would always buy an Easter lily, and when we were done, we'd put it in a certain flower bed. Well, we thought we were going to have so many Easter lilies growing back there. Every year, one came up. It was always the one we planted the year before, so I learned something new. As a flower bed inhabitant, they will bloom during the summer as opposed to the Easter. So that was another thing. It wouldn't. I couldn't figure out why it didn't bloom when we would go get the other one, but it was later in the summer. Yeah. The Philippine lily is grown in Zone 7. It's the most adapted of all native to Taiwan and the Philippines. That makes sense, doesn't it? They grow very tall. This is one thing that really distinguishes them from the other. Plus, the leaves are more like grass-like. The foliage is kind of long and grassy. And they bloom late. It also distinguishes it from the others. They grow in early spring and go dormant late fall. They're adapted to all areas of our state. And that is the Philippine lily. You propagate by division or very easily by the many seeds they produce. They commonly seed out and naturalize anywhere. So if you have them, they'll probably be in the woods next door or in the neighbor's yard. Anyway, they do have many seeds. It's the only lily grown from seed to bloom in as little as 1 year. So I thought that was interesting. That's the Philippine lily, and they're beautiful. All lilies prefer sun to part shade. Really hot sun can burn the foliage, and heavy shade doesn't provide enough sun for food production, and they tend to fall over in the shade like other lilies do. Most prefer well-drained organic soil with adequate moisture.
I'm going to talk about grains. And grains were very important to the ancient people of Palestine. The wheat, of course, was the number one of the grains because all of the priests, they had to offer the grain offerings to the Lord, and the very finest flour was made from the wheat. And I will say that out of some of the other grains, well, I'll mention those in just a moment. Wheat was sown when rain began in autumn, and harvested in early summer. And the wheat flour I just told you was in Leviticus 2, is where it shares about the priestly offerings to the Lord. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it abides alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. This is from John 12:24, and I love the scripture verse because this scripture verse reminds us of Jesus, and also it reminds us of seeds. Whenever I see a dead, dried up seed, it is very hard for me to believe that there is life in that seed. But there is. And also, just as Jesus was alive and died. He was buried. But he came back to life again, just like that little seed we can take every time we plant it. And it's really a picture of what Jesus did for us. Yeah, I love that. Some of the other grains are millet, barley, and rye. And these grains, they have all different, now these two are really similar. We were noticing how the grass or the chaff, part of the chaff is very long on the rye, whereas on the wheat, it's not. This one's drooped over this way. I said it was pointing down. It's not. It points up too, but that's just a heavy rye growing right there. But the millet is all these little balls on it. And barley was very popular in the Bible times. Actually, the loaves of bread. I don't know if you remember the story about the little boy who brought his loaves and fishes to Jesus. It says in the Bible that those were barley loaves. And these three grains here. These three grains here actually were more for peasant people or the poor, whereas the wheat flour made such fine bread. In Deuteronomy 8:7-9 says, "For the Lord God is bringing you into a good land, a land full of wheat and barley, milk and honey, in which you will lack nothing." And that's when he was speaking of his children going into the promised land. John 6:1-14 says, "The feeding of the 5,000 people, just as I mentioned, with two fish and 5 barley loaves." And barley was mentioned in the Bible 37 times. I don't know much about barley. In fact, the very little bit I know now about it, I learned while I was getting ready for this talk. Now we move to herbs. "And you shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin. And you shall apply some of the blood that is in the basin to the lintel and to the 2 doorposts. And none of you shall go outside the entrance of his house until morning." Now this is in Exodus, and I don't know if you remember, the word Exodus means going out or leaving. And Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt. But before they left, Pharaoh said, "No, not letting them go." And because he wouldn't let them go, God had to show his power to Pharaoh to show him who was really the king. And so because of the Pharaoh not letting the people go, God said, "You're going to pay for this. It's going to cost you your firstborn." And so the death angel was going to pass over the homes, and if the blood was not on the doors, then every family, including their animals, believe it or not, the firstborn animals as well as the firstborn children died. And this was a very sad time and a time of wailing in Egypt at the time. But Pharaoh did relent and finally allow people to go. And so hyssop, it was a branch. You can see it has beautiful flowers, but they use that kind of almost like a paintbrush in a way, or as a tool to put the blood on the doorpost. Some other herbs mentioned in the Bible. It says in Matthew 23:23, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees." Now, Jesus actually said this. "Hypocrites." He was talking to the religious people. And this amazes me because I don't want to be a religious person. I want to be a godly person, someone who wants to please God with my whole heart. So Jesus said, "You hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint," mint is an herb, "and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone." I did want to mention mint. They had to tithe 1/10 of their mint crop. And what they would do is, when they tithed it, that meant that it went to the temple and to the priests. And the priests scattered the mint on the ground, and when they walked upon it, it gave a fresh aroma. And they really needed that fresh aroma because there was a lot of blood around it. So it was important to have all those fragrances. Okay. I'm going to try to pronounce this right because I've been doing it wrong the whole time. These are some vegetables from the allium family. The onions, the leeks, and the garlic. Okay. The children of Israel, they started complaining. And they said, we remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers, the melons, and the leeks, and the onions, and the garlic. And they had been in slavery, and they were wishing they could go back because of, I think their tummies were growling, is what was happening. They wished they could go back where they were able to eat freely of all these wonderful vegetables they had in Egypt, whereas they were in the wilderness, and they had to totally rely on God, who took beautiful care of them. But anyway, now Joy's going to speak about the pomegranates.
Have any of you tried a pomegranate? Sometimes I've gotten that cranberry juice that has pomegranate mixed with it. I really like it. Anyway, we're going to talk about some of the attributes of the pomegranate. It comes from a Latin name. Pomen means apple. Granatum means seeded. It's native to the modern-day Iran and to North India, and originally described throughout the Mediterranean region. It was introduced into Spanish America in late 16th century and into California by a Spanish settler in 1769. And there could have been more than one, but they knew of one man that brought it to California. And it was cultivated throughout the Middle East and the Caucasus region. Primarily, Iran is the center of origin, and throughout tropical North Africa. The Indian subcontinent, Central Asia, the dry parts of Southeast Asia, and the Mediterranean basin. The Bible lists it as a revered beauty, and it symbolizes sanctity, fertility, and abundance. In Song of Solomon 6:11, 7:12, and 48:2, it describes the loveliness of a bride with the use of a pomegranate. And the cheeks remind the groom that true beauty lies within. I like that. In building Solomon's temple, there were 200 bronze pomegranates in the rows circling each capital of both pillars. And these ornate pomegranate sculptures became part of the plunder that they carried off to Babylon when the temple was destroyed. So they got a good haul. I'm sure those were worth a lot.
Joy, I want to point out something here while we have this picture. If you will look right here, this is called the calyx. And this was so fascinating to me, is Solomon's crown and the crowns thereafter. Actually, if you've ever wondered about the points on the crown, they were designed after this part, the calyx, on the pomegranate.
I thought that was interesting too. In the Torah, the law of Israel, there are 613 mitzvahs, or commandments. It's been said there are 613 seeds of a pomegranate. Is that right, Carol?
Well, actually, y'all are all going to have to get one and open it up and find out. Actually, someone did do that because I guess they wanted to challenge that theory, and they found only 200 in there. So I'm saying it could have as many as 612, and it's kind of cool to think of it as there's a seed for every one of the laws. Can you imagine obeying 612 laws? I thought the 10 Commandments was pretty good. And then Jesus made it awesome. He said, if you'll just do these two, it'll take care of all of them. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then, if you'll just love your neighbor as yourself, you don't have to even think about murdering or stealing or any of those other ones.
Sounds pretty good to me.
I like too. I love that.
It seems like the pomegranate was a very treasured thing and thought of as very beautiful. And they do have really beautiful blossoms. But in Exodus 28:33 to 35, the making of the priestly garments, it gives instructions God said, make pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn around the hem of the robe with a gold bell between them. Aaron must wear it when he ministers. They had a lot of rules. In Israel, the pomegranate is a symbol of righteousness, knowledge, and wisdom. The records show a carbonized exarch of the fruit ID'd in the early Bronze Age in Jericho in the West Bank. A large pomegranate was also found in the tomb of Dayhuti, butler of Queen Hatshepsut in Egypt. Now that's a hard one, that's a mouthful. They found a ship off the coast of Turkey with a waterlogged pomegranate in it, and it was with many things of worth, like jewelry, perfume, gold, luxury items. So they must have thought of a pomegranate as something very luxurious. During the Bronze Age, they found one in an elite residence along with some expensive things. So there's three different examples, and this was from many, many years ago. So I kind of take that it must have been something really precious to them. The description of the pomegranate, it is a shrub. It has a long life. Some in France are 200 years old now. They are a fruit-bearing, deciduous shrub. They grow 16 to 33 feet tall. They're bushy, upright. They have many multiple spiny branches, and the leaves are granato, opposite or subopposite. And they're glossy, narrow, oblong. The size is 1 to 2 3/4 inches long to 3/4 inches wide. And those aren't those beautiful blossoms? Those were. Now the next thing that you might not know about the pomegranate, now they're extensively grown in China and Southeast Asia and Afghanistan, and the highest quality is in Afghanistan. But now there are many that they grow in Korea and Japan of the bonsai, just for the bonsai. They love those little scrawny flowers that they grow, and they are beautiful. They really, they're not native, but they grow them in Korea and Japan like that, largely for its flowers and unusual twisted bark. The recommended varieties for Texas are Wonderful, Purple Seed, Spanish Ruby, Cloud, Cranberry, Texas Pink. And they need to be planted in full sun, 12 to 15 feet apart. They grow 10 to 15 feet tall, and they're 6 to 10 feet wide and can fruit first year.
We'll have some more trees for you. I will put cedar, acacia, myrtle, and oil trees such as the olive tree in the wilderness. I will set cypress trees, pine, and box trees together in the desert. There's so many biblical trees. And the boxwood was used for engravings and in the making of musical instruments. The acacia tree, the gum was used in the mummifying process by the Egyptians. It is also thought that the acacia tree was the burning bush. Now don't take that as a fact. It says it was also thought. Okay. And supposedly, I would think maybe because it was on fire and it didn't burn, maybe it has properties where it doesn't burn easily. The glory of Lebanon shall come to you, the cypress, the plane, the pine, to beautify the place of my sanctuary, and I will make the place of my feet glorious. Isaiah 60:13. The cypress is mentioned, and the cypress is one of the tallest trees in Palestine. And this was a wonderful fact. David's instruments, I'm not sure, they said they were, they didn't say they thought, so David's instruments would have been made of cypress. He had a harp and a lute and a timbre, which I don't know, that sounds like a tambourine, but I don't know for a fact on that one. And the pine tree was used to make booths. Now, Joy knows a lot about this. They made these structures with thatched roofs when they were out in the wilderness, and they didn't really have a solid home, and so whenever they came into the land flowing with milk and honey, and they were in their comfortable homes, from then on, and Joy said they still do it to this day, they still make these booths, and they actually kind of decorate them now, more so, but that was to remind them of where God had brought them. The oak tree, they will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor, Isaiah 61:3. There's several passages that talk about being like a tree that is planted by the water and who gives forth its fruit in its season, and it's sturdy and strong. The oaks, they were used in shipbuilding. So I think you'd feel pretty good on a strong tree like an oak. Now, the big ship, the Bible tells us it was made of gopher wood, and really, nobody knows what gopher wood is. Except they believe gopher wood isn't really a wood at all. They believe that it was possibly made out of cypress, but gopher wood means a process of wood. Specifically the process of using pitch or bitumen, and I'm not sure, I assume it's something like tar, combined with the wood to make the ship waterproof. So that is how they're seeing it now. So really, gopher wood is unknown and it's still a mystery. Okay, the olive tree. Genesis 8:11 says, "And the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated off the earth." And my sister asked me, do they grow olive trees in Texas? What do y'all think?
Yes.
They do, y'all knew. Yes, they do. And they have the big old gnarly wood, and they're very strong. The neat thing I learned about olive trees are they could have a fire pass over them, or they could have a floodwaters, fire. It seemed like there were three things. Well, anyway, they could have any kind of thing to totally destroy the tree. The root structure is so strong that it's going to come back. It's almost
down
indestructible.
very deep.
They call it the indestructible tree.
The roots go
And-
down very
Yes, and they're so, some of them are so old. Some of them they've had for thousands of years. They don't need, oh, I love this one. Sometimes I don't water my plants. An olive tree doesn't need to be watered. Now, I don't mean it doesn't need water, but you can pretty much leave that one up to God, and they survive amazingly. So that's so awesome.
I like that one.
Yes, I like that one too. I was on vacation, y'all, for 3 weeks, and I came back.
And it was while I was on
And it-
vacation.
Yes, and it was when that drought hit. 3 weeks of no water. Everything was brown. Anyway, I lost some stuff. But I didn't have an olive tree, so I couldn't have tested that one. Anyway, it's estimated that there are 865 million olive trees today. I don't know how they did that. They did a count, I guess. Did you know, this is something else I learned about olives. This is so fascinating to me. Do you know people don't just go along and pluck olives off the tree and eat them? You knew that? What do they do?
Well, they have to dry them, they press them, and I saw something, they went to a place where they had this sack, and they would put them in the sack, and they said, we put it in here, and we have to turn the wheel, and it squishes them, and then we put it over here, and then the oil drains out.
And that's for probably the making of the olive oil too.
Yes.
Well, people do eat olives, but they have to be brined first. So that's why they always taste so vinegary or salty or whatever. The reason you don't, now you can eat them, it's not going to hurt you. You can eat
You
them,
don't want to.
but you're probably going to spit it right back out because it's supposedly so bitter. I haven't tested it, I don't have an olive tree, but anyway.
The date palm is one of the oldest trees in the world. The scientific name is Phoenix
Dactylifera. D-A-C-T-Y-L-I-F-E-R-A. Dactylifera. It was cultivated in the 5th century BC in Egypt and Mesopotamia. The Judean date palm began as one variant 2,400 years ago, and the Judean date palm now is something else today. That was a long time ago. King Solomon and the Romans shaped it, and today it's different again. In Exodus 15:27, it says, it talks about after being saved from the Egyptians, Moses brought the Israelites to Elim by the 12 springs and 70 date palms to camp. Boy, I bet they were glad to get there. Boy, to be in the desert all that time and to have some springs, I can imagine that would have been a good resting place. And that was in Exodus 15:27. There are a few that still exist in Judea, and there are scores of variants that grow around the world. There are fossil records that show it thrived many years ago. One thing I did not know, that the date palm has male and female trees. And the female produces flowers of 5 to 40 spathes in clusters of 3, green color. The male produces lone, simple, white, waxy flowers, and they're split open, and they change color to brown, then they soften, and then they burst open. They pollinate naturally by the wind and the bees. But there are some places that grow them and that do artificial pollination.
Joy, I want to ask you,
Yeah.
have any of y'all seen dates growing? It is amazing. It's crazy. I never knew this is where dates came from. That, isn't that crazy? It's loaded with dates.
Dates are the oldest cultivated fruit in the world.
The sap on the trees can be converted to molasses, sugar, and alcohol. And in North Africa, Ghana, and India, they do that. The trunk, the leaves, and the leaflets are used to build and make things. They use everything on that tree. The trunk, they use even to make bridges, they make furniture, they use the leaves to thatch, and they use the leaflets they use to sew together. They use them for religious purposes, and then what is left over they use for firewood. And the fruit stock they used for decoration. Maybe they'll set a little thing on the table. And then, when it dries out, they feed it to the camel. They don't waste anything. The dates have one seed, and it shows them there, soft, pulpy, edible fruit. They are good in cake, breads, puddings, and to fill biscuits. But I have something simpler. I like to take just a block of cream cheese, put it on the table, and put some dates around it. And I serve that at special times at Christmas, Thanksgiving, when you can buy them at Aldi's or Sam's Club. I love them, and I even like fruitcake, which some people don't, but my husband and I both did. And I want to tell you that it is worth it to eat dates. They are very full of health. They are rich in vitamin C. Each has 20 calories. They're excellent carbohydrates and fiber. They have the minerals of manganese, magnesium, and copper. They have potassium. They promote friendly growth of bacteria in the intestine. That is important for all of us. And the date syrup is given to help anemic people with low iron. It can bring up your hemoglobin. I was so amazed at all the things. That's why I must like them. Anyway, they are very healthy. You can understand why they needed something like that in the desert. So I hope the Israelites found some dates on some of those palms. Just a side note, you can always recognize the date palm because of the pattern in it. I forgot to talk about this too.
The date palms, they're very tolerant to Texas heat, cold winters, but they do not produce fruit in Houston. They are planted in Houston, San Antonio, Austin, and Corpus Christi in some of the most luxurious neighborhoods because they make such a majestic road to drive down. They're just gorgeous, just beautiful. And because the dates require dry heat to be produced, they do not grow any dates on them in Houston because it's not dry. It's too wet there. And so, as I said, you can recognize if it's a date palm because of the pattern on the palm tree. It's a very impactful, majestic-looking tree. It is a tall evergreen tree with silvery dark green fronds and with no branches. Just at the top, you'll see the fronds like most palm trees that just come out with the crown of the leaves. And then this shows the seed. Anyway, I thought that was really interesting about the date palm and that we do have them in Texas. In fact, it's been a really exciting thing for me to just see. This is Carol's date palm. And I'll let her tell you about it.
I'm sad.
That's Smokey.
I'm so sad to find out humidity doesn't produce dates. It's so humid here, just like Houston.
But Carol, what's so wonderful about it, that little date palm we got from my brother that lived in Houston and he came to live with us. That date palm, after he planted it there, it went through that horrible winter we had. And it's still perfect. And it went through the hot summer to this year.
And I didn't water it, remember?
and it still looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
And Smokey looks pretty good there too.
So that's what a baby one looks like.
Yeah, but it's still living. Who knows how long it'll go.
Okay, next is the fig tree. When I was a little girl, we had a fig tree in our yard. And actually it was big enough to climb in. And I remember climbing up in the fig tree and those leaves are so itchy. And I don't know if you know what I'm going to say next, but I can't imagine making clothes out of those things. And the Bible tells us that Adam and Eve sewed them together to cover up their nakedness after they had sinned. And I just can't imagine that. They are itchy. Okay, the fig tree or the Ficus carycus, its fruits ripen during the summer among the large lobe leaves which shed in autumn. In the Bible, these large leaves were used by Adam and Eve to cover themselves to hide their nakedness. Okay, the Ficus carycus represents the nation of Israel. It was used by Jesus in several parables. It was frequently found beside the road near houses or near vineyards. And there was a lot of symbolism with the fig tree. He even spoke of the fig tree's leaf when it would leaf, and he spoke of the fruit as well. In the Promised Land, that was many of the plants. The fig tree were also many of the plants. It's mentioned in Genesis 3:7, that's the fig tree, that's the fig leaves sewn together in Deuteronomy 8, as well as, I think this is scripture here. Oh, no. Yeah, go ahead. This actually is also, this is so fascinating to me too. Another Bible story that I've known ever since I was a little girl. I found out that another type of fig tree is the sycamore tree. Now, did y'all know that? I always thought Zacchaeus was a wee little man and he climbed a sycamore tree, but I didn't have any ideas that it produced figs because the Ficus sycamoris does produce figs, but they grow differently than the ones on the fig tree. In the last picture, you saw how the figs were grown. Well, just like this. Well, on the next one, on the trunks, they're lined with figs, and they have a different taste. They're actually called a type of date. What did they call them? They called them the date of, It's called, they call it a date. It's not a date, but that's what they call it. And it grows in clusters up to the bark or the upper trunk. And it's a little bit sweeter than the other fig fruit. And it looks different too. My mother made the most wonderful strawberry jam using figs. Y'all probably know about the Jell-O recipe. You take the strawberry Jell-O and you use the fig fruit. The fig fruit has the little seeds in it, and it makes the most wonderful. You could probably go online and get that recipe. I don't have it. Okay, another tree was the myrtle. And I always just think of the crepe myrtle, but this is not the crepe myrtle. The biblical myrtle was an evergreen tree, and it's found in the thickets in Palestine. And it was used to make those booths. That was another tree that they used to make the booths that they had lived in. I guess there was a lot of thickets out in the wilderness, so they were able to harvest some of that wood to make their booths. It's symbolic for peace and justice.
My husband that I married, my first husband, was reading this in the Bible. And my name's Joy, as you know. And I'll read it for you because I know it by heart. You will go out with joy and be led forth with peace. How about that? Isn't that a good promise? Mm-hmm. Anyway, he claimed that and prayed about it, and we got married and we had 5 kids. Oh, wow. Anyway, you all that know my husband here was a friend of my first husband who died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but then you met Jim.
He had wanted a confirmation from the Lord whether or not he was supposed to marry her, and he opened up his Bible and said, "You shall go out with joy."
He had been a missionary to Japan and had come back, and I was in charge of the youth group, the children, not the youth group, the children, and he became the director of the youth, the teens. And so that's how we got to know each other.
Okay, next we have the grapes. And the first mention in the Bible of grapes was the first, I think he was the first cultivator of the plant, and that was Noah. He planted a vineyard. And you can eat them dried, fresh, made into wine or vinegar. Jesus referred to himself as the vine, and of course we're the branches, and as long as we remain in him, we bear much fruit. The aloe vera plant, I did not even know that it was mentioned in the Bible, but it is. And did you know that Nicodemus brought aloe mixed with myrrh to prepare Jesus' body? I never caught that, but it's in there. I read it. And it has wonderful medicinal healing in it. The plant, I had one of my sons got burnt so badly, horribly. He tried to jump over a barbecue pit and kicked it up, and it had just been closed, the food had been taken out of it, and somebody had just announced, "Everybody, this is hot." Well, my son was in the restroom, and he came out just feeling great, and he ran right over and hopped up. It was the most bizarre thing. Out of all the things he could have done when he came out, and that thing stuck to his skin, and his skin just peeled off. And that sweet, precious little boy could not stop from crying. And you know, the neighbor who was doing the barbecuing, who just said, "Nobody touched this," she had some aloe vera, and we put that aloe vera on it, and you know, it did not even blister. It was amazing, and you know what? He went right to sleep. So I believe in that stuff. It's a great medicine.
It's really wonderful for sunburn too, I'm sure.
Yes, it is. Okay, and of course we want to touch on the myrrh and the frankincense. They come also from trees, and they were a gift to baby Jesus. The myrrh comes from the gum resin extracted from a number of small thorny tree species of the genus Commiphora. Frankincense is an aromatic resin used in incense and perfumes obtained from trees and of the genus Boswellia. Okay. Something very plain is cotton, and I wouldn't have expected this because I love cotton. It's one of my favorite things to wear. I like 100% cotton, even though I know ladies don't like it because they have to iron it. It's so cool and comfortable. But I found out, I didn't even know it was in the Bible, but it is. In Esther 1:6, it says, the courtyard there was decorated with blue and white cotton curtains. I could just see them blowing. Tied by cords of fine purple linen to silver rings on marble columns. Couches made of gold and silver had been placed in the courtyard, which was paved with white marble, red feldspar, shining mother of pearl, and blue turquoise. That just sounds exquisite. And cotton, our good old cotton. Now, another plant is the flax plant, which actually linen is made from the flax plant. And Esther 1, I'm sorry, and it says that in John 27, and the napkin that was about his head, not lying with the linen clothes, was wrapped together in a place itself. And this is describing how the things were folded there where Jesus was lying, but he wasn't there. And interesting enough, they've been making linen for a long time. Linen comes from the flax plant, and it is also called linseed, and they have linseed oil as well, I guess is also from the flax plant. And it also is a food and a fiber crop. So people put flaxseed in a lot of their foods. It is pulled up by the roots, and it's dried, and the seeds are removed, and then the flax straw is redded, which I didn't know what redded was. Being redded means it's allowing the moisture to dissolve much of the cellular tissue, exposing the fiber. And the fibers are actually what they spin into thread. So there's quite a process that goes into that. Now, where would a garden be without thorns and thistles? Like our pocket park. Oh my goodness. Well, let me read you what happened in Genesis 3:17. To Adam he said, because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat of it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow, you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. And I really like in here, it tells us exactly, go ahead and advance, let me see. Tells us exactly what thorns and thistles are good for. Oh, also, Richard let me in on a little secret y'all might not know. Centerville has this thorn tree called the jujube tree. Did y'all know that? Richard, thank you for sharing that with us. We had to go see it, and it had fruit on it too. You were right. It is supposedly the thorn bush or tree rather, that the crown of thorns was made for Jesus when he died on the cross. And the berries, you know what? I told y'all something wrong. This is the tree that has the berry that's called a date. It's not really a date. It wasn't that big. So whoever said, I never heard of that, you were right. It kind of looks like, actually, do we have a picture? I thought we did. I don't know if it showed the berries on here. Nope, I guess not. I was thinking we did, but I don't remember. Okay, well, anyway, you're going to have to go see the one in Centerville. Does anybody know where Katie's Cakes are? On 1119?
Yeah.
When you just start to go out of town? Well, it's across the street, and it's so funny because we passed it going out of town, but when we turned around and came back into
It's
town.
kind of growing up into a telephone
pole. Yeah, it is.
with
It's kind
the
of
wire. And so when you look as you're going south, is that right? South, you will see on the left-hand side as you're going south, a telephone pole with a wire, and it's kind of growing between the wire and the pole. It's quite, and it's very
It's kind of pretty, I
It,
think.
it actually was, yeah. It was. It was just exciting to me. Anyway, these things grow also in Israel. So, what I was going to tell you, well, it's okay. The thistles, the briars, and the brambles should have been on there. Oh, it is there. Okay,
I
yeah.
just did it
Oh, it's
twice
okay.
accidentally.
And guess what they're good for? Burning! Fuel!
We use them to burn.
Yes, we do. And actually, Jesus said it best when he said, "It is finished, we're done."